Congratulations for your courage to say these things, really.
Thank you. And congratulations for this conference, because I think that it is very important nowadays that the Pontifical Academy has its words, because it's really a universal cause. And I mean, there are lessons to be learned from this pandemic on the issue of solidarity and the awareness that we belong to the same community of human beings. And unfortunately, there is a bit of a regression, and people cannot be condemned because they don't understand what is going on. Exactly. The idea of truth to be given to the and why, and also to tell them that leaders are not always able to solve everything. The people must be empowered as well. I think it's a very, very important message. And because the church says that everyone must like everyone else.
Thank you very much.
In other words, it's a legal, because I'm a lawyer, so it's a legal principle, but it's the most important principle of.
We have here a French bishop. Maybe Roland, do you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. My greetings to all of you. I think what you have touched is very important and tackles the question of anthropology. When we speak of social ethics or bioethics, it involves obviously a vision of the human person, its place in society, and so on. Now we have no common anthropology in our societies, and the church has obviously an anthropology to propose, to defend, but it is very hard today to reach the mind of the people who do not share this, what was common to all of us in Europe 50 years ago. And now certainly, if you could say something to that point, would be very grateful.
Yeah. Europe is a symbol of what the Europeans had to do after the war, and they did it very, very in a very short time. In the 50s, there is this reconciliation, that is to say mercy. And I think that the idea that diversity is the basis of solidarity is what is, you know, the more important message of Europe. We have to be together instead of fighting against each other. And unfortunately, nowadays, there is a crisis. There is a military crisis, and globalization, which is there, like the snow or like the sun. We don't have to say we don't like it, because even if there are more and more policies of nationalism in different countries, globalization is there. I can see you better than if I were in your office, you know. So this is globalization. And I think that because the politicians don't understand, because I'm not a politician, but I've been in a government, in the French government, as a minister. There is a dictatorship of emergency. Every day there is a new issue. And politicians nowadays, and I'm quite, you know, I understand them, they have to fight against everything, against the media, against the social networks, against demonstrations, and they want to be elected. And we need to have politicians at a very high level, but we must help them, because they cannot have a global view. So anthropology is something that I think that now that the Europe has not in its competence, as you know, education, but is aware. There is Erasmus because it's a cooperative system. There is no competence in education of the European Union. And I think that perhaps to begin with, because the fundamentals are there in Europe, perhaps the Pontifical Academy could have an overview of what is the present language of the European leaders on education and anthropology. I think that anthropology, because with this, the people are not really aware of what to think, because anthropology is put into questions, as you know. The idea that the human being has a specific dignity, and so that it induces a responsibility is sometimes no longer accepted. And I think that anthropology, I'm not a scientist, neither a philosopher, but I think that if you could reach, I will tell the French presidency, I think it's an extremely important, what is our responsibility as human beings to ensure that the house, Earth, is well managed during the time we are there. And I know that the European Union wants to foster its activity in education, but I'm sure also that they don't know what to do. So anthropology and the place that should have the philosophers to discuss with political leaders is very important in my view.
We have another question here, Spillenberg.
Thank you. Thank you for the very nice presentation. I have a question for you. You describe this as a class of distrust vis-a-vis politicians, distrust vis-a-vis science, and distrust about international collaboration. I'm interested in particular about the distrust on science. How could you explain that in the land of Pasteur, there are so many no-vax, no people who reject the vaccination? You mentioned the polio was just 50 years ago. How come?
Well, first of all, I think that, and it's illustrative to see that there is a whistleblower at Facebook. Social networks are more read by young people and by old people than the news in the press. People spend hours and hours and hours on Facebook and Twitter, etc., and Instagram. And to have these people watching these networks, that is to say, to give money to these networks, you must be provocative. You must be marginal. And I just tell you, I had a conversation with one of our maverick in the French press. It's a private conversation, but we are in a private meeting. During the Yellow Vests demonstration in France, I called him because I know him quite well. And I said to him, why is it that every day you show people destroying public goods and calling for the decapitation of the president, etc. And he told me, because I earn a lot of money. And if I don't do it, it is Russia Today, which will earn a lot of money, because Russia Today was, so these people, they are very much aware that to be provocative, to be violent, makes them richer. So I think that it is very important, first of all, and it's an ethical issue, to control the violence of the social networks, because they are not subject to the law on the press. And second, education. France, for instance, was a so-called scientist country, very rational, secular country, science versus religion. It's a caricature, but more or less in the 19th century, you had this movement. Nowadays, it is a country where the people are amongst the most suspicious of science, because we have a very centralized government, very, very centralized, and the people hate this government, that they seem too remote from them, and they believe of what they see. And the second issue is that the scientists and the doctors on TV were the worst enemies of themselves, because no one agreed with the other one. So I think that there is an ethics of the scientists. They are not politicians, they are scientists first. And sometimes they like to be on TV, and to be on TV, they must be against instead of being for. So the problem is that money and violence are now allies. And this is a big issue. And I think that politicians don't know how to do against this. And I've not either the solution, but it's a big reflection. That is to say, the predominant message is to hate the others instead of loving, I don't know, because I don't love everyone, but liking the others.
Very well, very, very interesting. There are some other questions? Yeah, please.
Well, thank you very much for this brilliant exposition. I wish to raise two issues. I have two questions. The first one, well, in the treatises, we have a section 12, a section with one article only. I think it is 167, on culture. It is very little, but we are not using it. I hope the French presidency will make a better use of this article and of this section, because we should at least give to the European citizens a certain knowledge of what is the Union, how the Union works, and what are the fundamental values upon which the Union is constituted. I consider here the question of values, because I see that in the public discourse, there is a unified rhetorics of human rights and of European values. But if you ask what are the foundations of these rhetorics, nobody can answer. And then you find an opposite rhetorics that equally, without any rational foundation, without any attempt to explain, opposes these values. Or you have not only one, you have several. They are questioned from the nationalists who do not want European values because they want national values. They are questioned by those who believe in a universal world ethics, but don't think that it can be concretized in a particular European form. They are questioned by those who do not want any values in the public sphere. And they are questioned by those who think that were raised in a culture of transgression and think that the best way to be transgressive is to be either Islamists or Nazis. You have this and even other different forms. So I think we should make a reflection on the values of the Union and on the rational foundation of these values. And the second observation regards the issue of what do we really think that democracy should be introduced in all domains of life? I am in favor of democracy in the political sphere. Those who decide our common destiny must have the confidence of at least the majority of our people. But there are several areas of human life that are not democratic, and I think they cannot be democratic. Just one example, the university, knowledge, the field of knowledge. Yes, university is democratic, all ordinary professors are equal, but not all human beings are ordinary professors. All human beings can become ordinary professors if they study and pass the examinations required. Today, the scientific issues are exposed to the public opinion, to a public opinion of people who have not the qualification to understand those issues.
I agree. I think that I met Mr. Butikio when we were both ministers. So glad to see you again. My view is that, you know, the young people, they need to know what's the meaning of what they do. And I think it's very positive. The problem is that, and I don't criticize it, but I just see that the new religion is fight against climate change. Fight against climate change has the advantage to be a common responsibility of all human beings. On the other hand, it is an intolerant cause as it is presented to the young people. Because when you see Mrs. Sundberg, you know, this young girl who is totally instrumentalized because there is a lot of money behind her, if I can be frank and candid with you.
We see the publication yesterday.
Yeah.
In your time.
This is a new religion. And this new religion is, there is a generation who is guilty, that is to say, our generation.
It's money.
And we have spoiled the life of young people. So I think that, and you have a new movement, which is that the white people are guilty for all what happened to the non-white people, and especially the white men. So I think that it's a general movement to help people hate others. And of course, I'm more, you know, I'm not a philosopher. I know that the role of certain countries to disorganize, and especially the Russians and the Chinese and the Islamic religion, to disorganize democracies, because democracy is a miracle on earth. It's really a miracle. It's a very short time in a few countries, not all of them. So I think that Europe will have a more important role if it shows that it is stronger than it is. And the culture of Europe.
We need to go to the conclusion because.
Okay. And the culture of Europe has to be, in my view, culture and education is our priority based on the actions of the state. And second, if there are bad things happening, there must be sanctions. And there is no, you know, the people shouldn't have the right to kill others or to threaten others. And now it's rather banal. So I think that strength and beneficent are not completely opposed, but I'm not speaking as an anthropologist, neither a philosopher.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very interesting, please.